Today, we're going to be talking about the music of poetry. Now, before you facepalm or roll your eyes, I promise there will be no syllable counting or clapping. Instead, we're going to be learning about how to listen to poetry and talk about the sound devices of poems in an educated way. By the end of this video, you should have a bigger vocabulary to talk about why you think a poem sounds cool. Now sit back and relax and enjoy while I read to you a stanza of Edgar Allan Poe's The Bells. And while you listen, I want you to focus on the sounds the words create. The Bells by Edgar Allan Poe. Hear the sledges with the bells, silver bells. What a world of merriment their melody foretells. How they tinkle, tinkle, tinkle in the icy air of night, while the stars that oversprinkle all the heavens seem to twinkle with crystalline delight, keeping time, time, time in a sort of runic rhyme to the tintinnabulation that so musically wells from the bells, 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 from the jingling and the tinkling of the bells. Now, while you were listening, what did you hear? I'm sure you heard the bells in the background, but focus on what the words sounded like. If you're anything like me, you notice that Poe said bells a lot. When an author repeats a word or phrase, it's called repetition. Authors use repetition to emphasize important words or sounds in their poetry and to help create rhythm throughout the poem. You may have also noticed that Poe rhymes a lot in the poem. We see a lot of end rhyme, which is exactly what it sounds like. Words at the end of lines that rhyme with other words at the end of other lines. How about the description of the sound? Could you hear them? Well, I'm sure you could hear them in the background, but were there any words that stood out to you describing the sound of the bells that Poe used? When a poet describes the literal sound of something, he's using automatopoeia. In this poem by Shel Silverstein, all the capitalized words are examples of automatopoeia. Now it's your turn to try. Can you find examples of automatopoeia in this piece? That's right. Tinkle, 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 and tintinnabulation are both examples of Poe describing the literal sound of the bells and are examples of automatopoeia. Poe also uses alliteration, or repeating the first letters of back-to-back words, like in runic rhyme, to help create an internal rhythm when we're reading a line. Another example of alliteration is Sally's seashells. Although it sounds like a tongue twister, this is an example of alliteration because the first letters of these words repeat. Speaking of repeating sounds, Poe also uses assonance. Assonance is when the vowel sounds of non-rhyming words are similar, like in jingling and tinkling. When we place emphasis on repeated vowel sounds, it also helps create an internal rhythm to each line. Miss Gordon, I'm confused. We're talking all about repetition of sounds. What's the difference between alliteration and assonance? Alliteration is when the first letters repeat, like runic rhyme. Assonance is when the vowel sounds repeat, like in jingling and tinkling. They make non-rhyming words sound good together. So that was a lot of information. Let's just take a moment to review. Repetition is just what it sounds like, the author repeating a word or phrase to give it emphasis. End rhyme is when the last word or phrase on each line of poetry rhymes with another last word or phrase in a line of poetry, like well and bell in the poem. Automatopoeia is the description of a literal sound. So it's like when a superhero hits something and they write out pow or bang. That's an example of automatopoeia. The author's trying to get you to hear the sound as you read. Alliteration is when the first letters or sounds of words repeat, like runic rhyme or Sally's seashells, and they help create a sense of rhythm within a line. And finally, assonance are when the vowel sounds repeat, like in jingling and tinkling. They make non-rhyming words sound similar together and harmonious. Poets use all of these sound devices to create rhythm within their poetry. They want to create music with their words and beats that you can almost hear. That's why we recommend reading a poem out loud the first time before you even start analyzing it, so you can try to hear some of that music the poet's trying to create for you. Just as painters use brushstrokes as part of their bigger picture, poets use sound devices to create the whole poem, and they all work together harmoniously to make something beautiful. Well, that wraps up our video. Thank you guys so much for your time.